Welcome to Colney Talk Podcast.
Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. Welcome to another exciting episode of Colney Talk Podcast, your bite-sized breakdown show. I'm your host, Alex. First-time listeners, glad to have you here. And to my returning guests, thank you for sticking with me. As always, I talk a bit about the Arsenal match and pick out my top 3 players who shined and one odd player not good enough I get to call out. This was a disappointing 2-1 defeat to Bournemouth. I think we've gone into the track of squandering a first-half lead to a draw, consecutive games, and now this is a loss. The lack of mental fortitude, the team had to figure themselves out, the pressure, the promising performance, and everything quickly deteriorating into one of the most frustrating display that I can imagine in this season. I feel bad for the boys, but I also just feel fully disappointed. Displaying this way in the home crowd, and then you have Declan Rice celebrating his 100th Arsenal appearance, scoring, and then tying that with the team's performance. It's like there's no way to remember that, achievement for him without kind of remembering how bad and poorly we played in this match. And that really sucked. It sucked so bad. The match began with a bit of tightness. I think as we expect, Bournemouth, they have the quality. There's a bit more respect. I can't believe that's how we see them and work themselves to that. So credit to them. And they didn't make it easy. I think from the start, they had the advantage, except for Arsenal, where we had most touches in the box. And there was this clear intention for Arsenal to establish an early control against Bournemouth's compact 5-3-2 formation. But I think they had a lot of youth and fluidity that we had to balance ourselves, and it wasn't that easy. What I found a bit comforting was how we didn't get overrun in the middle. Although our seemingly strongest part of the game on the right with Saka was surprisingly quiet. I know it's part of their formation tactics. I'm sure that's how they plan to play us. So credit to them on that. For us, the left flank proved particularly productive, which is something we should have. Martinelli's direct run-in and his pace caused consistent problems for Bournemouth's defense. And I think we had to exploit that a bit more. But we didn't recycle the ball enough to lock things down. We didn't recycle or control the game as we should have imposed ourselves. As far as Arsenal's build-up play, we showed encouraging signs of cohesion. Part for me, I liked how he displayed a good radius to him that allowed Arsenal to progress the ball effectively, pushing off that pressure a lot into our halves. Even though we got into that, for the most part, he was able to spray it to the right places and feed it to Odegaard to do the rest. And Odegaard in particular was finding those half spaces, and it was really great. It was quite different in terms of reroutes and different ways to find a solution, because they didn't make it easy. As I said, his connection with Rice was really good, creating very dangerous moments before he, eventually combining for the opening goal in the first half. I mean, it was a beautiful goal starting with, and it all began with Partey, as giving full credits to him and how he made the right decision, his calm presence and control, on the run from Rice to be served that ball. That was beautiful Arsenal play. And that Declan Rice's goal showcased Arsenal at their fluid best. Odegaard delivering one of his trademark reverse passes that splits defenses, and you have Rice showing really remarkable composure to round Kepa before slotting in an empty net. So this was flash of greatness that we have. It was Rice's intelligent movement, drifting from his midfield position into penalty areas, that was a thing of beauty, something that he kept showing in his locker. And it also helped create the space for this opportunity of a goal and for other moments when he came into the box to make that impact. So that was good for him. Martinelli's industry down on the left flank created a golden opportunity, not one, not two, which was Trossard and Saka, where Trossard midway through the half, with a stooping header, forced Kepa to a save. So those combinations were serving, where Martinelli would get on the ball and he would connect with other players to make something happen. Although, even as Arsenal took that lead, there were concerning undercurrents to their performance that foreshadowed the later troubles. And, you could say it's fatigue, maybe, But I will want to stop there because I don't want to sound like I'm finding some sort of excuse or reason to make it sound well-rounded. It's just what it is. They were not on it. There was a curious lethargy with the team, in the final third at times, almost as if, the goal that we had created was a false sense of security. That's not at all true. The sharpness was evident in that build-up to Rice's strike, even though we didn't have the consistency that we wanted. But the team, I'm not going to disrespect them and say they didn't have it in them, but there were just some things that seemed much more evident than making this claim. Bournemouth, while largely contained, offered occasional reminders of their threats. Evanilson had a promising opportunity when he had a header over Kivior who slipped while attempting to clear across. It is what it is. Kivior had a huge challenge in front of him. Even more concerning was the nervous moment from David Raya, who miscued a pass, which allowed Evanilson again to lob him from distance. So it felt like this symptoms of mistakes started creeping even more. I don't know if it's based on the pressure that we were faced or the situation. And this is a good test for the team to measure themselves in terms of accountability, staying sharp, and knowing their weaknesses. These instances, while not immediately punished, it proves that it would take a miracle for us to retain a clean sheet just at this point with everything that happened. Arsenal's 4-3-3 setup was interesting in terms of dynamics against Bournemouth's defensive block, in terms of their formation, how they were changing. Interestingly, Saka played usually narrower rather than maintaining the width on the right that he had. I think he was pushed further down into our half. Again, the way they had locked it down, credit to them, we had to find answers. And that we kept working on. And it created, we didn't have those overlapping opportunities for Ben White. He had a few of them, but those were early in the first half. And, we didn't see much of that again. And kind of made us somewhat predictable as they cut off that right channel. And with a clear preference in what we wanted to do, we had to find other ways of attack down through the left for Martinelli. Now, rounding up the half with Arsenal leading that 1-0, there remained a sense of work that was undone and how we needed to do more. It wasn't more so of, are we satisfied the 1-0? Clearly not, but I didn't see that, fight for the next gear to get that. Not as easy, but that fight though, the inability to translate early score in a commanding win, it has been a reoccurring theme, and against Bournemouth, the wastefulness, it proved again how costly we have lacked in that department. Second half began with two excellent chances within minutes of the restart. Martinelli delivered a cross that found Saka unmarked, but he measly could only direct that header straight at Kepa. Now, sometimes I feel these players think they're going to get another chance. And it's my feeling as I watched the game, and Saka just missed one. Shortly after that, Saka came closer to a signature curling effort that missed the far post by inches. I mean, those were very commendable moments. Those were probably our best chances to kill the game too. So, when we had it, we tried. No need to harp on that, but we could have done a bit more because the clinical edge that was required was fully absent. As the half progressed, Arsenal's performance morphed into concerning transformation. The crisp passing and purposeful movements like I saw in the first half gradually evaporated. Instead, it was hesitant decision-making and ridiculous technical errors. I mean, you could clearly see it. The team's energy visibly diminished, and that allowed Bournemouth to grow into the match and became territorial chaos that we managed in the first half but couldn't in the second. So it felt like they smelled blood. Bournemouth sensed that shift and they capitalized well enough, because as soon as Antonio Semenyo came in, it added a new dimension to Bournemouth's attacking. This straightforward but effective tactics for them, it exposed us from a defensive organization, and it all went downhill from there, folks. I mean, it was quite shocking. It really was. I mean, the equalizer from a throw-in, which eluded Miles Lewis-Kelly as far as defending goes, allowed for a loop to go over David Raya, and now it was, 1-1. And following that equalizer was perhaps even more concerning for me because more than the goal itself, the Arsenal players visibly looked deflated as I saw it. It felt like they really wanted to run the clock down, get away with the draw. But yeah, it just felt as though it was as if the concession had drained all confidence from a team that had been in control just minutes earlier. It happens in any game. But for the team that had control, that had more opportunities, it was troubling. Just as we had to give Rice some reprieve, getting stopped off, then came the second goal. Folks, the sentiments that I had when I saw how poor Odegaard defended, if I really get on it, it would derail my thoughts here. Truly, it really would. Because first, the way he was defending, that would have been called for a penalty for sure. And second, it didn't seem like he was defending at all. I'm not sure if that's how we do it in the past, but clearly on Odegaard, there's this thing about his strength and the durability that bothers me. And I am just going to respectfully leave it there, but it was poor. It was bad. And what made this collapse so difficult was how it looked more and more, a complete absence of a convincing response after falling behind. The body language, that did it for me, folks. I mean, there was no hiding it. You could see it. Players unable to impose themselves as the game slipped away. This is probably one of the times when you might just have a little tussle here and there. A yellow card wouldn't hurt at this point, but get the players a little bit agitated to get back into the game. That's another way to do it. I grew increasingly frustrated like most of you were because you could see many fans leaving early. They felt the team were not in for the fight, and that's a damning verdict on the performance that we all witnessed. So yeah, it's pretty much what we saw in this game. I'm not even in the mood to get into Arsenal's second half collapse and the relative factors. It's just a sad state. And I don't need to add to that, really, because we need a lot of good news, a lot of positives, and quickly a good turnaround. So, I'd rather not be one of those to pile on this. The absence of Gabriel Magalhaes was particularly significant in this context because usually he typically organizes the defensive line during set pieces, getting their defensive responsibilities and checks. He gets on the players when they are ball watching or losing their spark. It's not that Big Gabby would miraculously do something, but there's this ingredient of a no-nonsense defending or no-nonsense, behavior where he's over-communicating that should be displayed even when we're down, even when we still concede, because that's the mark of how a team should prepare, So, but I didn't see that. It's not to pick a player or two out, but the team needed something like that. I'm one of the fans that would applaud making actions in the game, taking a shot, doing something, that would alter some emotion rather than making a pass, adding to that hesitation, extending that, feeling of low confidence from other players. I mean, Odegaard and a few other players did that. There were a number of scenarios that I'm describing which was damning. And that was early in the game, just before we conceded. It's impossible to win a game from that kind of trend. Really is. Arsenal's grip now on the second place looks increasingly tenuous, and seriously, there's a lot of questions that will emerge about the team's mental fortitude, which we need more than ever going into Wednesday's crucial Champions League semi-final. So it was a tough watch in this match, and I feel like this team needs to sit down and learn a lot from it because we have zero time to play around. Now, moving on to my top three players that stood out in this match, I just got to at least round it up on the positive sides. First player, Declan Rice. Congrats on the milestone. Rice undoubtedly deserved a mention here following an exceptional individual display on his 100th Arsenal appearance. That got here really fast, didn't it? Just like that. We're now counting down to 200. So really great from him. Playing as the number 8 that we now love. I saw the best of him in that spot, which he does greatly. His goal, perfectly identifying space, the timing to exploit Odegaard's pass, and the quality to round the goalkeeper before finishing calmly. Yeah, that's one full swoop of Rice at his best. This wasn't an isolated moment. No, I mean, it really wasn't, because you can see him showing those attacking quality in the box the culmination of his consistent forward movements throughout the match and the chances that he kept showing early in the game. So, yeah, he made late runs into penalty areas, and those were the closest to giving Arsenal any goal attempts in the first half. And that repeatedly stretched Bournemouth's defensive structure and created spaces for others. His work rate, too, never went down, and he continued driving forward. There was a moment late in the game where he won the possession in midfield and immediately looked to initiate a counterattack. It just sucks that we didn't get the most from it because there were opportunities that we could have done a whole lot more. I loved his performance. Undoubtedly the top performer in this game. Second player, Saliba. He was delivering a lot of composed defensive display, doing a lot of crucial defending. His reading of the game, consistently anticipating danger that kept us from conceding more goals, to be quite frank. There was a perfect example in the second half when Bournemouth broke dangerously through Semenyo's timed run, and Saliba timed his intervention to perfectly neutralize the threat with minimal fuss. But ironically, this tackle that led to the throw-in was where Bournemouth equalized. So, it just sucked that was the counter effect. But that shouldn't detract from Saliba's individual brilliance and excellent plays in the game. Throughout the match, though, Saliba had to become Big Gabby in some ways, a bit more vocal, stepping up as needed just to cover for Kivior. Another particular sequence that stood out was when he stepped out to intercept a pass that was for Evanilson and then immediately initiated an attack, with a perfectly weighted ball to Odegaard. So he was trying to do that, what we normally see from Big Gabby. And for sure, the scoreline could have been even more damning without Saliba's intervention. For sure, the scoreline could have been even more damning without Saliba's intervention. I believe Saliba had to make 2 perfectly timed slide-in tackles in the penalty area to save us. Really, he could only do so much when the team's structural integrity broke down, but in the end, you gotta, praise him when he did good. Third and final player, Gabriel Martinelli. He was a bright spark in front of goal as far as attack and providing our strongest attacking threat. Maybe that was by design in terms of Bournemouth's defending. And he did give them problems throughout the afternoon. There was a compelling duel between Martinelli and Bournemouth's right side defenders. And, we should have been more successful from what he did in terms of outputs, because he created high quality chances with crosses and cutbacks and, provided that excellent opportunity for Trossard in the first half. And then early in the second half, where he had a cross for Saka, who was unmarked. And then that was for Saka to finish. So, those chances came from Martinelli, which, he deserves all those credits, which could have been an assist or 2. And, there were really strong attempts to give us the 3 points, but it just didn't happen. He gets the nod for me in terms of better positives throughout this match. Now, in terms of odd player, it's a combination of Bournemouth's defending and the stiffness on the right side. And, for Saka, there were flashes of his quality as far as having that curling shot that narrowly missed the far post and, the header that he could have done a bit more. Saka had 2 excellent opportunities to extend our lead even after the break, but couldn't convert it. On a better day, either of them could have changed the game's complexity entirely, and it just sucks that today was that bad of day. Folks, it's hard not to say most of us have our mind on Wednesday's big showdown, but this should have been a good dress rehearsal that I expected to be more good than bad. But, performances like this today, they're simply all over the place, simply unacceptable for both players and management. But I know they will be acutely aware that they have eggs on their faces. For now, all I can do is just pray for a miracle, and I hope they do something good with it. It's all we can really ask for here. Okay, then, that wraps it up for this episode. Thank you for tuning in for what was regrettably a rather somber discussion in this loss of a game. Please like and share with your fellow Gunners. Until next time, take care.